We did a Feints run and we got 92% off the still. We also played with some flavors. Let's see what we did. Hello and welcome back to another Beaver DIY day. So today we are doing something interesting, and what it is, we are running our Feints. Now, what is your Feints and where do you get Feints from? It is relatively simple. It's everything that is left over that does not go into your blend. So excluding the heads and your 4 shots, it is everything that you don't use. So all your tails, everything from whatever percentage you like to cut down to about 10%, some guys say, down to about 0%. It's all up to where you want to run it, and that is what we charged our still with. Now, my plan with my Feints are, because it is a lot of whiskey Feints that I have in there, because I've been doing quite a bit of whiskey lately, I want to do a vodka. So a vodka means I need to run at a very high ABV so I can strip away as much flavor as I can, so I'm left with a neutral spirit. So the plan today is to see how high I can get the ABV. Future Beaver or Intro Beaver has more than likely bragged about the ABV, or he hasn't. One of the two. We'll see. Okay, we're not 100% sure what's going to happen. This is distilling and stuff can go wrong. So the plan is to get to the high 80s, low 90s to get a neutral spirit, so we can play around with some flavors and that type of stuff. And because there's a lot of grain whiskey tails in there, we might be getting a nice little grain type of whiskey. So yes, there's some rum and some other stuff in there, but we might just get some hints of that grain coming through. So we'll see what happens. Coincidentally, this week I've been asked a lot, once again, what is the difference between tails, your Feints, and your now that word escaped me, your low ones. Okay, now are they the same thing? No. Tails and Feints are close to the same thing. What tails are the stuff that you don't use, the stuff that has a lot of fusel oils and some funny funky flavors that you don't want to use in your spirit, but you ran it to see what is there. And then Feints is exactly like the word says, faint, so stuff with little alcohol in it, meaning anything from, depending where you cut off, let's say you cut off at 30%, everything from 30% down to where you've turned off your still. Generally between 30 and 10% is where people play around. I sometimes even run my still into 0 and keep it running for about 10-15 minutes on 0, or collect one more jar on 0 to make sure that I extract as much alcohol out of the wash as I can, if I'm not going to reuse the wash for a sour mash or for a continuous cycle run or whatever. Next up is your low wines. So low wines is the stuff you get when you do a stripping run. A stripping run, you do not care about flavor, you do not care about ABV, you do not care about anything. All you're doing is you're charging your still with your wash. You're turning your elements up as high as your condenser can knock back the vapor, and you're going to run it up until 0. So you're going to collect and collect and collect up until there's no more alcohol coming out, and then you have extracted as much alcohol out of there as you can, decreasing the volume that you need to run, and then you can add it back into your still. So I've got a 35 liter capacity. I normally run about 20-25 liters in it, and at the end of the day, if I do a 200 liter run, I need to do 4 stripping runs, and then I'll do 1 spirit run with everything that I have taken off there, add it all back in again and distill it out. Cool. So that's a stripping run with your low ones. Okay, so what we are running today is Feints. It's not low wines, it's not from a strip run, it's straight Feints. Now, set up your still. For me to get my still ready to run at a very high ABV, to strip as much flavor as I want, my vapor needs to travel through as much material as possible. So number one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be packing my still. So what do I pack my still with? I've got a couple of coils of copper wire. So this is washed and cleaned copper wire. They were left in a vinegar solution to burn off anything on there, and it was also boiled for a couple of minutes, about 30-40 minutes, to ensure that any residue or anything is off there, and then rinsed and washed properly. And yeah, now they are nice and clean and ready to be used. Next up, I'll be using marbles, ration rings, pieces of copper tubing that was cut off, and all of that. So I'll be packing my still as full as I can with all of this media over here. So the more media I have in my column, the longer the vapor will take to reach the top, and the more of the flavor will be stripped away. Cool. So yeah, let's get packing. Okay, so now that we have as much marbles in the column as the column can take, I'm just going to lock them in place with these little rings of copper wire. So I'm not going to squeeze them in hard, just a little bit of a squeeze, and if you're able to blow through your pipe, the flow is perfect for your vapor to move through. If you struggle to blow through your pipe and you can actually feel the restriction happening, or if you suck through your pipe and you feel restriction, you've packed it too tight. That's why I like marbles, because they don't compact too much. Now just to check that nothing falls out, there we go. Cool. The still is turned on. We just have to wait for that to get up to 10 before we can cap it. Once we are ready to cap it, I'll see you guys again. Then we're going to put this onto the still and get to part number 2. How we are going to be running some reflux. So for those that are wondering, this is the reflux section, and we just run water through that to cool it down. Also been having a lot of questions regarding that. So the water we are running through these little pipes that crisscross on the inside of the column will recondense the vapor and force the vapor to drop down again, and then as the vapor drops down, it gets heated up again, and it goes up and down and up and down and up and down, up until it happens so much that it's only pure, or as close to pure ethanol as we're going to get, and it passes through the reflux and it comes up the spout. Temperature in the still has now reached 50 degrees. That means I need to cap it. Just to recap quickly, guys, we have now filled the column with packing. I am going to be running reflux, but we'll talk about that once we get to that point. But yeah, let's cap the still and get it warming up. Okay, so with the still all capped up, time to attach the wires. I've got my, just to answer a couple of questions that the guys have been asking for. The hose on this side is connected to my water in. The tap on the side here is connected to the reflux chamber. So if I close this tap, there's no water going through the reflux chamber. The pipe that comes off on this side here, that comes out of my reflux. So if I connect the hose onto this one here, it goes out, and I can control the amount of water that goes in and out of my reflux. And the tap over here, which I put a new tap on, or the outlet over here, comes from my condenser. So what I can do now is, if I want to run my still with full reflux and not waste water going through my condenser, what I can do is I can close this tap off, and that will allow me to not let any water through my condenser and only run it through my reflux to save water up until I can get a recirculating system going. Let's get our hoses all connected up and wait for first drips. Okay, so we have now been in full reflux. So we are pumping a ton of water through the reflux section here. And when I say a ton, I actually mean about a pencil thickness, not the lead, but the actual pencil thickness we are pumping through our reflux chamber. And how I know when it's enough water is I feel the outlet side. If it's nice and cool, it's enough water running through my reflux section to knock back anything that comes out. So if you look down here, we have nothing coming off the pecker. So what we want to do now is we are going to start dialing back on the reflux to allow us to start taking off and getting first drips. So let's get the camera down there. We're going to start adjusting our tap and getting first drips to come off. And there we go, that's first drips. So now all I want to do is I want to dial in my takeoff speed. So with the first drips coming off now, and it's going off a little bit too quick for my liking to get that high ABV, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit more reflux up until I get to the speed where I want, with my power going in and my reflux knocking back. Instead of adjusting my power, I will adjust my reflux. If you don't have a reflux section, you will be adjusting your power. There we go. So you can see the stream is not solid all the way to the jar. It's starting to break up about there, and that's the speed we want to take off on. Jar 1 is off the still. Let's see if all our steps have actually worked and we have a high ABV product. So remember, this is a hobby or a thing that you have to do to get good at. So sometimes things fail, sometimes they work as planned. So let's have a look. So jar 1, we are on 93% ABV. So our setup works. We are running at a very high ABV, and this product should have little to no flavor. We ran the reflux for 10 minutes at full reflux to get as much as possible fractions within the column before we started taking off the product. We had a solid yet broken stream coming off of it, and remember, this is the way I run my still. It is not the way you're going to run your still, but take some tips from how I run it. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to finish the run, and then I'll see you guys back when we have everything to see how much product we took off our Feints run. So the still has now done its thing. We did the run last night and we finished up with everything that you see in front of us. The plan worked and we got some high proof stuff off the still there. So the packing and the reflux worked a charm. For the first 4 shots and heads, I put the still on. The moment I started getting first strips, I put it into full reflux mode. So nothing coming off the spout, absolutely nothing. Left it there for 10 minutes. So for 10 minutes long, that thing went into reflux, and there's a nice video that will be linked here where you'll see the reflux action happening. So everything was supposed to come off at the takeoff point went into back down the column, and it just kept on stripping, running through that packing. Then what I did is I turned the reflux down and I took off the first 4 shots and heads jar nice and slow. So I compressed my 4 shots and my heads by allowing that reflux to keep pushing down the heavier stuff. So the lighter, more volatile stuff came off first. Then what I did is I put it back into full reflux, and I took off, left it there for 5 minutes, and backed off on the reflux a little bit, and I took off jar 1, put it into reflux again, but not full reflux, about 75%, and I took off jar 2, did the same thing, jar 3, okay? Jar 4 I just carried on after jar 3, and jar 5, jar 6, jar 7, jar 8, I just left it at that about 75% reflux, 25% coming off the spout, and it carried on going down. So the ABVs we got off was my 4 shots of my heads I took off at 93%. My jar 1 I took off at 92, jar 2 91, jar 3 90, jar 4 90, jar 5 85, jar 6 85, jar 7 80, jar 8 80%. And then you can immediately see by taking such high ABV product off the still, that drop happened almost instantly. So from jar 8 to jar 9 it dropped to 40%. It kept for now jar 9 and jar 10 at 40%, jar 11 dropped to 25%, and then I have this last big ass jar of the tails at 15%. Cool. So I tasted everything as it came off the still. The interesting thing that happened was the rum flavors came through first, and then it slowly transitioned into some of those fruity flavors from the cinnamon moncour and that type of stuff, and then it transitioned down into the whiskey flavors, so the wheat and the grass flavors and those hay flavors, and everything started coming through at the last little bit. And then the last 3-4 jars were all whiskey flavors at that low end where the fusel oils and everything started pulling through. So yeah, to sum up, some awesome flavors. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a pretty neutral spirit. So you're never going to get it flavorless, but we got it as close as we can. And when I said I tasted those flavors, it was minute. Sometimes only on the exhale some of those flavors stuck in your nose, sometimes just on the tip of your tongue as you tasted it, and then it just disappeared. So yeah, what we want to do is we want to create a nice high proof spirit. So we're going to mix up everything from jar 1 all the way down to jar 9. We're not going to go jar 10 or 11. Those guys had way too much taily flavors. So 10, 11 and 12 we're not going to play with. We're just going to mix up jar 1 to 10, jar 1 to 9. So yeah, that's jar 9 at 40%. So that goes in. Yes, it's going to drop the ABV a little bit. Excuse the dog. It's going to drop the ABV just a little bit, but not too much. It will just add some of those nice funky flavors into this. Give it a quick mix. And let's test the ABV. So I'm hoping for the high 70s to 80s on this. Let's see what we get. So we are sitting exactly on 80%. So 80%, that's a nice high number. What we want to do now is we just want to quickly see how much we have so we can calculate. So everybody has been asking how I proof it down. So number one, I proof it down by feel. But let me show you a easy way when you're starting out. So number one, measure out how much you've got. So we currently have about 2.2 liters of high proof 80% spirit. You can download this app. I will link it in the description down below, and it will give you the amount of water you need to add to proof your spirit down to the level you want. So I want to proof this down to 40%. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the app and we're going to go to water dilution. So we have 2.2 liters of product, 2.2 liters of product, and we have it at 80% ABV, and we want to proof it down to 45%. So we need to add 1.7 liters of water, bringing our total up to about 4 liters of final product. Okay, so 1.7 liters of product, 1 point of water to our product, and boom, we should now have 45% proof product. So next up, we're going to be making, first off, a tippy tinto. Next, we're going to be making a zuurdoof. So a zuurdoof is a passion fruit liqueur, and yeah, it's pretty simple like that. I add a little bit of golden syrup to it to make it a bit sweeter. So yeah, let's get into the zuurdof first. First up, your passion fruit. I use 4 cans of passion fruit in a liter mason jar. Okay, so that is our 4 little cans of passion fruit pulp that we've added. I will add a little bit of booze into each of those jars just to take the rest off, and then about a tablespoon of golden syrup just to make it a little bit sweeter. And then let's add our alcohol. Yeah, so shake up your zuurdof, let it stand for a couple of days to extract all those flavors, and you will have a nice little zuurdof or passion fruit liqueur to take some shots with. Next up, we are making a tippy tinto. Now, a tippy tinto rum, if you look on the back of the label, it is a rum with an H. So that means it is rum that has been flavored, or a vodka that has been flavored. So as far as I can tell, what a tippy tinto is caramel essence with some vodka. So I have some Bootlegger's caramel here, and it is probably one of the highest quality caramel flavors you're gonna get. So I will be using this for the tippy tinto. A tablespoon of this with a 750 ml bottle should be more than enough to get that tippy tinto flavor going. So we're going to go for a tablespoon of that. And like I said, Bootleggers is probably, from everything that I have tasted, 2 tablespoons, not 1. It's probably the most caramel or accurate to caramel flavor essence that I've ever tasted. So this stuff is super tasty, super sweet, and it just tastes awesome. So let's quickly mix up that caramel essence. That is my version of a tippy tinto. It doesn't have the color because I'm not going to add the coloring agents to get that artificial color, but it has a beautiful caramel smell to it. If you want more caramel smell, you can always add a little bit more caramel essence, but this is as close as I get it. And then finally we are left with about 2.5 liters in the pan here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding it to bottles and keeping it for our next liqueurs. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me on this episode, and as always, if you have any suggestions what we need to do with this that's left over, please pop it down in the comments. If you want me to try any recipes, please let me know, and as always, remember to like, comment and subscribe. Thank you very much.